Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Just don't say that, he's gonna go quick.
Come to order, please. Clerk, please read the roll.
You want to call it order again? Are you recording? Yeah. Adel,
Here.
Avedisian,
Here.
Buell, Camilleri,
Here.
Curry, DeBella,
Here.
Fitzgerald, Galligan, Gardeau,
Here.
Hall, Healy,
Here.
Hoffman, Holloway,
Here.
Yono, LeBeau, Lester, Magnan,
Here.
Murata, Osgood, Payne,
Here.
Patel,
Here.
Salemi, Solomonides, Sweezy,
Here.
Taylor,
Here.
Torres,
Here.
Vecino,
Here.
Carrier. We have a quorum.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, I'd like to welcome Commissioner Adel back. Apparently, I guess 4 of the 7 have been completed in terms of commissioners. And I think Hartford's the only one. There's 3 left in Hartford that have to be completed. So welcome back, Commissioner. Swearing in of the new commissioners. Andy.
Solemnly swear that you will faithfully uphold, according to law, your duties as a commissioner of the Metropolitan District of Hartford County to the best of your abilities. So help you God.
I do. Approval of the minutes of the meeting of April the 1st, 2019. Is there a motion to adopt? It's been moved and seconded. Are there any additions or deletions? Comments? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Andy? Okay, item 6, public comments relative to agenda items. Okay, nothing. Report from the district chairman, no report today. Report from the chief executive officer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to try and make this quick. First, probably most important thing we could talk about tonight, as you can see, Victoria is not here with us tonight. Julie is. But Victoria and her husband, Juan, have a wonderful new baby girl born April 23rd, 7 pounds, 13 ounces. So we just want to congratulate her and her family. I know they're very excited and hopefully
And their grandfather.
and their grandfather. I didn't want to embarrass him, but our Commissioner Ray Sweezy is a first-time grandfather. Is that correct?
Yep.
So we miss her tremendously. I was told by Julie, and this is the kind of employee Victoria is, but checking her emails. So that's she's an outstanding employee. So we wish her all the best. Just talking about, I think we killed to death in the last meeting the sewer user study, which was April 29th. And just as a point, I'm not going to go into the great details, but the meeting was held. The meeting was requested to be held in Windsor rather here at the MDC. And we granted that request, and the towns chose they wanted to meet internally to discuss their internal review of the study themselves. I have asked them that they provide a unified set of comments that all 8 towns can agree to in writing, and then we will review that, bring that forward to the Board of Finance, and have the Board of Finance make a recommendation to the full board. As you know, we've authorized $65,000 plus or minus for the Raftelis report, and any other additional work will need additional funding. So we'll request Board of Finance and the full board to give us that approval to move forward. Also, I did mention in the earlier meetings, I did meet with the town manager of Glastonbury regarding the Glastonbury land on April 26th, and to discuss the possibility of Glastonbury coming up with additional funds. As we know, we're waiting for the state to possibly provide additional funding through the Bond Commission. Bond Commission has not met, and we're not quite sure. We've had reports that there will be, quote, a debt diet in the state of Connecticut and possibly no bonding for 2 years. So I've asked Glastonbury town manager to consider if they're willing to purchase the land outright without the state's involvement, and they have put in writing to the state a request for this funding, and they're waiting for an answer back in writing from the state before they can consider any purchase price. So with that, I will move on to
On that also, the committee directed you to go out and to bid the property to Toll Brothers had given us a $12 million offer before. That could have went as high as $15 million if the zoning had gone through, but $12 million without the zoning. So we've also directed you to go out to large developers in the country that may be interested in that land. Now, you're saying you can't do that until September?
Yeah, so as part of the subcommittee meeting, the commissioner is mentioning that the direction was given to go to the town and go to the market directly at the same time within 60 days. At the meeting and in discussions with our attorneys, it was determined that we would be in violation of our agreement with Glastonbury if we go out for any kind of public advertisement for the land prior to September 30th. So we are going to honor that September 30th. Attorney Sandler has written a letter, and will write a letter, and we'll bring this to the subcommittee to explain to them what we have to do under that agreement to comply with that agreement. The issue we do need. I have asked Becky Seelman from our actuary to give us an analysis of what if they can quantify what price of the land is equivalent to the 12.5 that it's in the pension fund as we speak. They are working on that. What they have told me is that if we were to have put $10 million into the pension fund on December 2014, that would have been an equivalent to the 12.5 that's in there today. But what I've asked her is, on a sale price.
It would be a lot more than that, because since 2004, we've made 10% a year in the pension fund. If you have 10 million in 1 year, that means 10% is 11 million. Then it's 12.1 million. So it would be a lot more from 2004 to
No, I understand,
today.
Commissioner, but the land was put in the pension fund at 12.5 in December of 14. So that's our, quote, starting point. Obviously, they can't predict the future. As we talked, the market's doing much better than it was. It's earning about 10% versus the 7.25%. So it's doing better. But they are going to give us an analysis by dollar amount to determine. Obviously, whatever we sell the land for, less than $12.5 million. Obviously, there's an immediate hit to the pension. But obviously, to your point, it's going to be earning a rate of, quote, 10%. So what Becky has told us is that at 7.25, basically the value doubles in 10 years. So if whatever the value is we sold the land for, that value should double within 10 years. The problem is we'll have to increase our ARC payment. So we have to weigh the ARC payment increase versus the pension fund itself. So we're working on that. We're going to bring that to the subcommittee for your review in detail.
Excuse me. Attorney Sandler was asked that same question during the subcommittee meeting, and he clearly told the subcommittee that there was no legal problem going out to the public. So what has changed since then, and can we see the language that, did he change his mind, or?
I apologize, I wasn't in the meeting, but what I would tell you is I have, if I can answer that two ways. I think maybe Attorney Sandler's interpretation, Attorney Adler had indicated in the meeting that he felt that it would not be appropriate for us to go forward until September 30th. My concern, even if we were okay, and we were okay with going forward publicly, the challenge that we have is that we're asking the town to purchase the land for a set amount, whatever that number is, 15 million or something equivalent to that, with or without the state of Connecticut. If we submit for public bids and we receive public bids, two things are going to happen. One is you're going to have people in the industry that are aware of the fact that the MDC has an agreement with the town. So what will the bids be real, or will they be skewed? And so we don't, and then the other problem is if the bids come in significantly lower than what we're asking the town to pay, you might have a circumstance where the town will say, well, why would we pay that if, so we don't think that it's good to mix and match.
But you got to remember in the Gallagher report, we went out and got two bids. One's 18 million. Now, I don't know who did these appraisals. The report I've read, it doesn't say what companies have done these appraisals, but one appraised it at 18 million and one appraised it at 20 million. So we do have paid appraisals on this property. So, I think the 15 million is in line.
I would agree with that. The appraisers in this, were the appraisers that we've used many, many times, who I have great confidence in. But secondly, let me just say what's changed in the meantime is looking at the agreement that we have with Glastonbury. We had extended that agreement for, I think, it's the 8th time, right before your subcommittee meeting. The date on that extension of the agreement is what Scott just related to you, September 30th. The Glastonbury certainly views that they have a right to purchase that land until September 30th. So the thing's different is that Attorney Apter, in reviewing it, cautioned us against proceeding with a written contract with Glastonbury that extends to September 30th. Glastonbury said that they certainly felt that they had a right to purchase until September 30th. And finally, even if we go ahead with that, there's certainly going to be a cloud on title. Glastonbury, under this type of thing, could bring almost a right of first refusal declaratory action. So with being more cautious, I suppose we could test it, but it certainly, given everything that's happened and is happening, doesn't seem to be a wise course of action. So that was not raised at the subcommittee meeting.
When was that extended?
Yeah, look, guys,
contract?
let's go through
It
the
was
chair.
maybe,
The yearly contract has been, like you said,
Can
8
we,
times it's been
Ray,
renewed.
one person at a time, go through the chair for questions.
It's been renewed 8 times, right?
yes,
And it's a year, isn't it a year renewal?
no,
It's less than that?
it's less than that. We
Okay.
keep it on a shorter leash.
Okay, good.
Further questions? Go ahead.
Thank you. Again, just a reiteration of our issues regarding state funding. So as everyone's aware, in 2016, prior to bidding the tunnel contract, which was approximately $600 million, we agreed with State of Connecticut DEEP that we would break the project into 5 smaller projects due to the fact that the state could not deal with a large cash flow requirement for a project of that size. But we did write a couple of letters back and forth, April 5th and April 7th, 2016, to try and get the state to commit to our expectation of the grant and loan, especially the grant portion for the overall project, and that would be awarded to each of the 5 contracts as we expected for the whole. We did not get that approval from DEEP. They would not provide us and could not commit the state to that bond commission. So the MDC went forward with the approval of the board to bid Contract 2. Contract 2 was the largest portion, which is just under $300 million. In preparation to finalize the contract for the tunnel, the remaining contracts are Contracts 3, 4, and 5. Contract 3 is the pump station, which removes the effluent or the overflows from the bottom of the tunnel up to the treatment plant. Contract 4 is for Franklin Avenue to actually collect the overflows from Franklin Avenue area that overflow to the Weathersfield Cove, and that is required under the consent order for elimination of CSOs. And then you have Contract 5, which is to do the same thing in the West Hartford, Newington area for the SSOs. So Contract 3 and 5 are specific to EPA, to the consent decree. Contract 4 is specific to the consent order, State of Connecticut. Our expectation of those 3 contracts, which total approximately $150 million, was that we would receive 48% grant, approximately 48% grant, similar to what we received for Contract 2. And to our worst fears have come true, although DEEP has said they support the grant portion, and they have said the problem that they have is they need a bond commission hearing in order to receive the money. So we were expecting a bond commission hearing in February. We were expecting a bond commission hearing in March, April. And now we're hearing, as everyone, that there's possible debt diet in the state of Connecticut for upwards of 2 years. So this is a significant issue for the 8-member towns, because the way in which we calculate the special sewer service charge, which we now call the clean water surcharge, that's based on assumptions that are made based on grant and loan procedures and policies that we have with the state, and the timing in which we're going to bid these projects. And our expectation was Contract 5 was supposed to be bid by consent decree, EPA, in February. It's now May, and we have yet to bid that, because if we bid those projects without the approval of the state and the funding, we will void, and this has already happened to the MDC, we will void any possible collection reimbursement, thank you, of grants from the state of Connecticut. So the total of these 3 projects represents about $150 million worth of construction costs, which is about $70 million in grants. If we don't receive those grants, the special sewer service charge, or now clean water surcharge, is going to increase from 2019 to 2020 by 60%. It will go up more than $2. We've been going up about 50 cents a year. It's $4.10 this year. It'll go up. Our plan was to go up to $4.60 next year. It will go up to more than $6.60 next year. So this grant money is extremely important to complying with elimination to the Weathersfield Cove, to complying with elimination to the overflows in West Hartford and Newington. And the challenge is at least getting some kind of commitment from the state. They call it a deviation letter. So the state of Connecticut, DEEP, can actually give us a deviation letter that allows us to guarantee that when and if the money is available, that we're guaranteed to receive that money at some future date. I've asked to have, I've written a letter, and we provided that to all of you, to EPA. We're asking EPA to intervene as well, because we have a mandate by the state and a mandate by EPA to finish these projects on a certain schedule. But the really challenge that we have is, now that we're, quote, in a debt diet, we have a long-term control plan that is in review by the state of Connecticut DEEP. If the state of Connecticut approves the integrated plan as submitted, we still have to go to referendum. So any work that's done above and beyond the tunnel project, we need additional authorization from our towns and from our customers. If we don't get this $70 million in grant and we're forced by EPA to go forward anyways, in my opinion, there's no way a third referendum is going to pass, because everyone's already screaming at the top of their lungs about the cost of the clean water surcharge. Again, remember, in 2006 and in 2012, although the referendums passed overwhelmingly, more than 75 or 76%, they weren't paying for it. Now they're paying for it. So they're very concerned. People are very concerned about the cost of the clean water program. That's why we proposed an integrated plan. And so we're hopeful that some way, somehow, the state has a bond commission hearing and authorizes the monies for contracts 3, 4, and 5. We are going to Boston. We're trying to schedule that for the next couple of weeks. DEEP has been invited to that meeting. So we're hoping that we can get support from both EPA and the state of Connecticut DEEP, so that we either don't have to do the project until a bond commission hearing occurs, or we get the money from the bond commission hearing. We talk about CMOM all the time. We talk about CMOM as more of a maintenance component to the consent order and consent decrees. CMOM is capacity management, operation, and maintenance programs, and it deals with cleaning your systems, lining your sewers, TVing your sewers. It's more the maintenance component of it. And in a lot, in part, some of that's paid for by the clean water surcharge, and some of it's paid for by operational expenses. And I'll use an example in West Hartford, Lynbrook. That project was an ad valorem project. It was paid for by the towns to line that sewer. But a lot of the work, we did 200 miles of lining sewer, and the majority of that's paid for by the special sewer service charge or the clean water surcharge. If we don't get referendum approval, and we don't get funding from the state, and EPA mandates that we still continue to perform CMOM mandate, the only way to pay for that is going to be through ad valorem. So this is an extremely important issue for the state bond commission hearing. The $70 million that we would get from the bond commission, basically by statute, allows us to increase the expense from the previous $1.6 billion previously approved through referendum. So now we have, quote, $1.7 billion to spend. So it gives us some time to actually do work complying with our consent decree, consent order, while we wait for approval from the state of Connecticut through the integrated planning process. But there's a bigger issue when it comes to CMOM, and we're going to address it with the state, we're going to address it with EPA, is that if the third referendum does not pass, the only way we can continue to comply with CMOM is to pay for it through ad valorem. So that's a major impact to the towns that we're going to have to consider in the future.
Mr. Chairman,
Questions? Commissioner?
if state does not go and bond for, let's say, next 2 years, should we not develop a alternative plan? For example, as you mentioned, requested deviation, then requested deviation, and if we get the approval, does it have the enough strength legally to go to bonding and the based on their promise, and we can bond money, means, and then later on refund the money to the people who are paying for it? And that type of plan should we not develop?
So just to clarify, the deviation letter is a deep document, not a state bonding commission document.
I understand.
So all it does is it says that based on priority for the state of Connecticut deep, is that if money is available, you, the MDC, are going to get the first monies available. But if no monies are available, then the deviation letter is, quote, meaningless. And so that's the concern.
If I might, you can't, it doesn't work that you can pay for it, they then do the bonding later and give you the money. You can't do it that way. You have to be approved and get the bonding money as part of your project. There's no going back and getting money for a project that you've already paid for.
But in that case, then,
Prove that.
should we not on our own prioritize and select 1, 2, and 3 different options and proceed? Because you can't have $300 million sitting there.
You're correct, you cannot, and one of the reasons that you cannot is that we have made assurances under the bonds that we've previously issued that this tunnel is actually going to be connected to something. You can't just build a tunnel to nowhere. So it has to be finished.
With the machine, too.
Yeah.
Further questions, buddy?
Quick question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So you really can't, this project is designed, but you can't put it out to bid unless you have the money. I mean, you can put it out to bid, and then you can't award the project, so the bid becomes useless, and all that work becomes
Correct.
wasted.
It's not part
So
of the contract.
until somebody tells us that we have the money, we
Right.
can't even put it out to bid. Now, how long is the bid period
Well,
going to be for this?
and just to add to that, Commissioner, is that if EPA tells us we have to bid it, even without the grant money, then that's a whole nother issue. But the
We'll
bid
have to
period,
fund it with the ad valorem or, you know, the surcharge,
Surcharge,
the
we'll pay,
surcharge, like you
right.
said, but how long is it going to take just to get a bid done? and
Kelly,
do
is the
that?
bids 90 days, or what is the bid period?
For $150 million?
Well, that's 3 contracts.
Yeah, but for contract 5, what is the bid period?
Probably 40.
Kelly, can you speak into the microphone, please? Because you're going to interrupt the question and answer
This was,
situation.
contract 3 is the
Please.
pump station, right?
Yeah, but contract 5 is first,
Can we,
Commissioner.
Okay.
can we address one? Go ahead, Kelly.
I'm not exactly sure on the number of days because we haven't we have it ready to go. I would have to defer to my contract specialist, but I think it's between 45 and 60 days. It's more than our typical 30 days, and that's just when it's out to bid. We have to evaluate it and award it. So it can take 90 to 120 days, I would assume.
Kelly, could you verify for us
Yes.
that information when
I
you
will.
give it to the clerk? So it
I
can
will.
be added to the discussion.
It sounds like, it sounds very reasonable, though, Kelly. It sounds like it makes sense. Actually, I would have think it'd be even longer for that kind of money. But, so even if, you know, once you were assured that you had the money, you could easily be 5 months to 6 months away from the project starting, you know, so, you know, and I don't know where it shows up on the schedule now, but I don't know if we were supposed to be doing it now or about to start it now or what, so.
Contract 5 was supposed to be bid in February.
Further
Okay.
questions,
Thank you.
Commissioner? Go ahead, Scott.
And then an update on the decommissioning of Colebrook River Lake Reservoir Hydro Facility. As you know, we did have a Hogback Commission meeting on April 11th. Commissioner Avery Buell was our appointed commissioner for the Hogback Commission. We had a long discussion specifically talking about the MDC plans to decommission the hydro facility and to not re-engage with the agreement with the Army Corps. We talked a lot about the details about our stream flow releases and the Army Corps' responsibility once the MDC has gone. But the important part of this was that the group understands that the MDC has the right to and is moving forward with that decommissioning. We have, I just had a conference call with the Army Corps today, talking about the details of that, and they're actually doing a project right now to repair their sluice gates, which allows the water to penetrate through the dike, which we use also for our hydro, and that's actually expediting our exit. We probably would not have removed our equipment until beginning late summer, but because they need access to repair their gate, we're removing our infrastructure today. So hydro units have been removed. The important part of that is personal property tax is effective October 1st. So we want to make sure that we've timely and we removed all of our personal property, which includes the hydro units directly. They're at West Hartford Filter now as we speak. So we're working diligently to get that done. We're on schedule, and we will be, the hydro units will not be operating next year.
Bill?
Ray?
So the personal property tax is about $80,000.
Yes.
And will we be completely out of the deal next year? Because this year we had, what, $800,000 in the budget for repair work and stuff, and next year it went up another 900 to $1 million. So we'll be able to reduce the budget next year, that larger number?
Yes, they had.
Approximately $1 million, right?
They had anticipated that next year's maintenance, we pay 33% of the maintenance, and we paid 33% of the debt service. The debt payment is the last payment is this year, 2019. So we will not have a $260,000 debt payment next year, 2020, and we will not have they have proposed that it might be as much as $1.2 million from $800,000
Right.
in 2020. So we will not have
We won't
that.
have to budget the 1.2 plus
Correct.
the 80,000 on property tax,
Correct.
but we'll still pay that $250,000.
Well, it depends, but the $250,000 is the revenue loss due to riparian rights. So we'll try to meet that as best we can, and if whatever we owe the Farmington River Power Company, we will pay them.
Right.
Once we're done with this agreement, we need to sit down with them and have a discussion on that contract as well.
So you did a great job. You saved us $1 million plus.
Not yet.
Well,
You will. You will. You will.
we won't get the revenue, though.
You have to eliminate the income, Mr. Chairman.
It's not that much.
Commissioner?
Currently, you estimate some income from the electricity, right?
Correct.
So there will be some reduction in income. How much is
Correct.
that?
The revenue total for all of our hydros, so that's at Goodwin and Colebrook, is about approximately $1 million a year. And I would say that the majority of that is at Goodwin. Colebrook is Chris, 30-something%?
I think we budgeted about $220,000.
Yeah, so of the million, it's about 25% of the cost or of the revenue. The majority of the revenue is made at our Goodwin facility, which is obviously our dam, and we're not going to stop utilizing that facility.
Further questions? Is that it?
Well, that's be it. Okay, I'm going to skip over the Avalon. We just talked about that. I mentioned a meeting, and maybe I did not, but as part of our working directly with the town of West Hartford in terms of stormwater discharge to the sewer system, we've been working and had numerous technical meetings with the town manager and their staff to try and find a way that, one, we can continue to comply with our ordinance, which is to disconnect illegal discharges, sump pumps, so to speak, groundwater from a private property that's being pumped or gravity flows into our sewer system, while also dealing with concerns the town has regarding safety in terms of discharging that same water onto the sidewalk or what have you. So having a safe place for it to discharge is really important to the town. We completely understand that. So, but the real solution is having a stormwater pipe that we can actually pump or discharge the water to. And obviously, this is a separated sewer system, so the town of West Hartford owns the storm system. So we're working on an MOU between the town and the MDC. We're working on prioritization, so the project areas that we would like to do for the clean water project, and in terms of whether it's aligning a sewer main or increasing the capacity of a sewer main, we'd like to partner with the town, like we did on 4 Mile in that same town, or Greenhurst, for the town to actually put a storm pipe in at the same time we're renovating the sewer. The town has budgeted $100,000 for 2019 to start a sanitary, a stormwater study. And they just approved the other night, last Monday night, another $200,000 to do additional studies within the Lynbrook area. They have requested that we work with them to develop, the town or the neighbors within the Lynbrook area would like to have a public hearing with the town, and the town has asked if we would mind joint presentation to talk about the issues, the clean water project on our side and the stormwater, and how we can best work together to solve both problems. And I have said yes, and we're shooting for June 6th at, I believe they might want to have 2 meetings, 2 o'clock in the afternoon and one at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock at night. We're working out the details, but we are going to have a joint meeting with the town to talk about these stormwater and clean water related projects.
MDC is not going to be part of paying for any study.
Correct. Yes, the town has budgeted $300,000. They actually hired CDM to do that work for them. So there's some lessons learned that they can benefit from, but no, we're not paying for the study.
Further questions? Commissioner?
I just want to thank you, Scott, for pursuing that. I think the communication has been lacking for a while, and coming together with the town to really lay out a plan will be beneficial to both parties, so thank you.
Right.
Through?
Sorry, I just want to make sure. One more. Yes. I'm all done.
Any questions? Further questions? Report from Chief Financial Officer, District Counsel.
Okay, thank you. I have 2 things to report to you on. The first is, last Thursday, we received a decision on the 777 Main assessment case. We're still in the process of reviewing it. It was a negative decision. We have contacted appellate lawyers. I will be giving everybody a full written explanation this week of the decision and what the next steps will be. And then at the next meeting, I would ask that we have an executive session to fully discuss all of the implications. It is not something I think that we should talk about our various legal strategies in open forum, but we will address that to each of you in writing this week. Secondly, I emailed to all of you our lawsuit against the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. Unfortunately, despite our best efforts to resolve this matter with DEEP and the new administration, we have failed. I got a letter back from them, from the same Attorney General who's been handling it, which simply repeated their prior offer, which we determined to be unacceptable, which is to pay the high-volume sewer rate and add to that the clean water surcharge, which is nowhere near what everybody else is paying. We had pointed out to them the changed regulation, the changed ordinance with the changed sewer rates that you had approved last year. They were unmoved by that or by the changes in definition. So frankly, we have no other alternative at this point. I have sent to you the lawsuit, and in the lawsuit, we are seeking a temporary and permanent injunctive relief, and it's on page 16 of the lawsuit. Most of the lawsuit is just relating the facts, which you already know. But at the end, we're asking for a temporary and permanent injunction requiring DEEP to cease its discharges from the Hartford landfill into the MDC sewer system until such time as we resolve this dispute, the payment of the remediated groundwater fee. We're asking them to account for the $20 million that was transferred to DEEP as part of the closing fund for CRRA. We're asking for a declaratory judgment against DEEP that we have the authority, based on the powers granted in our charter, to charge for the remediated groundwater fee. We have the authority, based on the power granted in the charter, to increase it, and we have the authority to change it. So the facts are, just to remind everybody that as part of our efforts to stop infiltration into our sewer system, we have, you adopted way back in 2007, as part of the sewer charges, a fee that would apply to remediated groundwater. As we were going through, and that has been applied in numerous occasions, probably 20, 25 occasions that I'm aware of anyway. Everybody has paid it, nobody has challenged it. We, as part of our due diligence of reviewing our system, in 2014 discovered that that fee should be applied to the Hartford landfill, which was depositing large amounts of leachate into our sewer system. That sewer system is part of the CSO system. Combined sewer overflows occur in the sewer that it's being dumped into, and it is going into the Hartford plant. Obviously, when it rains is when we get the most of the amount of inflow from the landfill increases at precisely the time the pipe is least able to handle it. There are options that DEEP has that they could use so that you're not getting overflows of this leachate material into Hartford and into the Connecticut River, not the least of which is putting it into a tank and trucking it to wherever they wish to truck it. And you could do that, and it would not, you would have no spills if you did it that way. They have said that they can't do that, that it is simply too expensive, and that their position is that we do not have the authority to charge this amount. I would remind you that other customers of the MDC are paying this fee, and they're paying a considerable amount of money to the MDC. So unless we hear different, we are doing final revisions to the draft complaint, and we will be prepared to issue it and serve it on the state this week.
Okay.
I'm prepared to answer any questions.
Mr. Chairman? Attorney Halloran, it's interesting that the state already has one 72,000-gallon storage tank for discharge area A. They simply would need another storage tank for discharge area B. So I think it's very possible they could do other things there. One of the things that was interesting in this was that you mentioned several customers that were paying this, and one of them was a state agency, but you don't name the agency.
It's OPM, right?
Well, it's Public Works, or it's the Bureau of Construction Services. OPM is actually paying the bill. I mean, OPM pays everyone's bill in terms of operational expenses. So OPM is paying for this $60,000 a month for the construction activity of the garage on Buckingham for the Department of Construction Services. I'm sorry, I think it's Department of Administrative Services, is the Bureau of Construction Services. So it's DAS that is the client, or the customer, sorry.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Richard?
777, was there outside counsel?
Yes, there was.
Are they going to be present at our next meeting?
Yes, they will be. And we also have an appellate lawyer that I've simply
Garrett?
retained.
Gary?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wanted to ask the next step. I mean, since the state is a sovereign, don't we have to go through an intermediate step?
No, we're not suing the state. We've sued the state. We're in the process of trying to recover the money. However, this would be an injunctive action refusing their ability to place it in into our sewer pipe.
And a declaratory judgment. We
Declaratory
have filed a claim with the State Claims Commissioner for past due amounts. That is pending. Unfortunately, there is not a time period under which he has to decide that, or she has to decide that. And we are tracking that, but that would be under the old ordinance going backwards. What we're seeking in this action is both a declaratory judgment that we have the right to do this, and secondly, a permanent injunction asking that they, because they are not paying, stop depositing this contaminated material into our sewer system.
Commissioner, this is a paying diet. It's a paying diet. Anyway, does that answer your question? Thank you. Further questions of District Council? Okay.
Very good. I will send you the final document when we serve it.
Thank you. Okay, item 10. Committee on Organization, consideration and possible action regarding appointment of commissioners to committees, May 6, 2019. Is there a motion to receive the report, adopt the resolution? So moved. Ray, do you want to?
It was passed by the Committee of Organization tonight.
Unanimous vote.
Unanimous vote.
Oh, and I'm sorry, the resolution was amended.
There was one amendment.
An amendment? Right, okay. There's one amendment.
Commissioner Payne to audit.
It was moving Commissioner Payne to audit that wasn't on the agenda.
On the
docket.
resolution.
We amended the resolution.
The amendment was to the motion of appointment of Commissioner Payne. Without objection, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item 12, Committee on MDC Government, consideration and possible action regarding a legislate, can we take these together or
What about
separate?
11?
11.
I'm sorry, 11, yeah. 11, Board of Finance, consideration of and possible action regarding amended resolution for water main replacement and issuance of bonds. Is there a motion to adopt
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
and receive? Okay, who's this? Rich? It was Buddy, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's so moved. It was passed unanimously by the Board of Finance, Mr. Chairman.
Are there any questions? Rich?
This is the 3,300,000, is that correct?
3,500,000, isn't it?
500.
Was it 3,507,000? I think it was 3,507,000, wasn't it?
3-3.
Oh, it's 3.3 million?
Maybe could Sue explain the scope? Because that adds to $550 a linear foot. Are we also repaving streets or doing landscape improvements? What else are we doing with that amount of money?
She's going to answer the question.
So back in last fall, we put $8 million, we appropriated $8 million for 2019 water main replacement program. It included these streets in this project for the extra money. But in the meantime, we've decided to exercise an option to award 2 contracts to our accelerated water main program. So when we put the accelerated water main program out, we were contemplating 1 contractor. We're going to award it to 2 separate contractors so that we can do more installation. So we're looking for an additional $3.3 million to do this project, 6,800 linear feet on Pilgrim, Sequin, and Brainerd in West Hartford. The bids came in, were about 379. The actual bid is 2.578 million. There's additional costs, as you know, for oversight, some soil disposals and such. But the bids came in at 2.578 to do that 6,800 linear feet.
2.5.
Well, the scope, though, does that include repaving the entire road and curbing, and it can't be just...
Usually, we just do trench restoration. I don't think on this project there was any sort of agreement to do any full width.
Okay.
Further questions? Thank you, Susan. If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 12, Committee on MDC Government, consideration of and possible action regarding legislative consultant. Is there a motion to receive the report and adopt the resolution?
Move it.
Moved and seconded. Okay. Is there discussion? Commissioner?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I actually chaired that meeting on April 24th, and both of these items were passed unanimously.
Okay. Are there any questions? If not, all those in favor of item 12, legislative consultant, item A. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Item B, proposed addition to the General Ordinance G-8H of the Metropolitan District Commission. Is there a motion to accept the report and adopt the resolution?
Move it.
Second.
Second.
Discussion, Commissioner, did you chair this too?
Same, yes,
Okay, right.
unanimous.
Questions? They're both unanimously accepted by the Government Committee. If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, item 13.
I've already addressed that.
Yeah, but we haven't taken action on it. Don't we have, so there's an action motion here.
But I have the authority to do it.
Well, let's just get it on record, okay?
We don't need executive session.
What's that?
We don't need an executive session. It says executive session.
I think we probably should, don't you?
Didn't I just talk about this?
Yeah.
That's all, that's everything?
Yeah, that's all.
Okay, item 13, consideration and possible action regarding pending litigation against State of Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection.
So there's no resolution is provided, but it's just looking for approval.
Okay. There's a motion, there isn't an attached motion. I'm going to ask that there be a vote on accepting the action as proposed by the district council.
So moved.
That is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Before you is the motion to go forward with the injunctive action and declaratory judgment? Rich?
Yeah, could you just, again, explain clearly that this is an action to shut off the service to the Department of Environmental Protection? Is that clear?
It is clear. What will happen is, we will serve the complaint. There will be a preliminary meeting at which the court will ask us when we would like to proceed on the temporary injunctive proceeding, and they will most likely ask us if we would consent to a combination of the temporary and the permanent injunction at the same time. That's usually what happens. It's possible that they might just let us go forward on the temporary injunction, but I doubt it, frankly, because granting a temporary injunction in this place would put the landfill in a difficult position. They've had plenty of time to come up with an alternative way of disposing of their material. They have not. So we definitely are asking for a temporary injunction. I expect that it will be combined into a permanent injunction hearing, which is usually the most expeditious way to resolve these matters finally.
Mr. Chairman? One question, approximate length of time on this procedure?
Well, we will try to be in court within a month for a temporary injunctive hearing, and then they usually take a couple of weeks before they give you the first court date, and then a schedule will be developed thereafter. But we will be working on our briefs now. Okay, we know what we want to say, and the establishment of the facts is relatively straightforward in this case.
But just one question. In the process of the litigating, obviously the issue could still be opened and resolved
It could be.
by either the court or either side of the issue. Further questions? Okay. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous decision. Okay. Opportunity for general public comments. Commissioners, questions and comments? I'm sorry, Andrew.
Just wanted to know if we could maybe reconvene the subcommittee of the Water Bureau, because I don't think that's had any meetings since I was last here.
What was it?
The subcommittee of the Water Bureau, when we were meeting last time in December, I think it was.
It was a committee to see if there were other possible revenues that the MDC could look, for.
On the water.
Well,
Oh, okay.
Okay, thank you.
we have met once or twice, and actually Dominic was named chairman of the committee until you were reappointed. So at the next meeting, Dominic will step down. You'll be named chairman.
Thank you, Dominic.
If you want.
I haven't heard Dominic say that, but that may happen.
Right.
No, that was agreed on when we named him a chairman. We needed a chairman.
No, we did because you were not reappointed. We had great faith that you would be reappointed, and here we are. And Dominic has said that he would definitely step aside for your seniority and your great esteem.
Definitely senior.
Commissioner.
I'm older, right?
Attorney Stone was here with his laundry list of 4 pages of sausage coming out of the State House. What's going on? Have any of those items that the MDC had concerns with, are they coming true? Are they still in limbo? What's
The conservator of the sausage will give you a
I like that.
report. He's standing
I like that.
right behind you.
I was just listening to The Godfather, Sweezy, with telling the puppet master. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for that question, Commissioner. First of all, our bill 971, Senate Bill 971, is on the Senate calendar. We expect it to be referred to Finance, and we do not expect the Finance Committee to act on that. Secondly, we have the primacy fee bill. That's the DPH's financing of the DPH function by the water companies. As you know, the 4 major water companies contribute the most, and then on down the line, depending upon the size, other water companies, both public and private, contribute as well. But that particular bill, House Bill 7193, is on the House calendar. It's part of the governor's budget, so it has a life of its own, so to speak. The Connecticut, or CWWA has provided language to OPM to address most of their concerns, some of our concerns. We're sitting back taking a watchful look at that legislation. I will tell you that we do not support the legislation as it is presently constituted. Even with the CWWA amendments, we are not lending our support to the legislation if revised. Absent a acceptance by the recommendations that we've made, it's our position that the bill should die as it is. So, by the way, because it's part of the budget, it's going to be subject to change as it moves forward, but I don't foresee it going away. The state water plan is on the General Assembly's calendar for this session. If the General Assembly does nothing, which appears to be what the advocates of the plan would like to happen, but if nothing happens, it'll be on the governor's desk come January or February 2020, and the governor can then sign or not sign the state water plan as it presently exists without legislative action. We are pushing the legislature to act. There's one revision that we've asked for that addresses this concept of public trust. That revision, as we've gone back and forth both with OPM and with the governor's office on language. To paraphrase the language, it merely states that nothing in the state water plan is intended to nor does increase or decrease rights as they presently exist relative to the supply, conservation, and distribution of water. And again, I'm paraphrasing. I have the language. I'll send it out to all of you so you have it. It's much more articulate than I've just explained it. But it is language that would address our concern about this whole public trust doctrine becoming more than it really is, and creating a whole slew of potential litigation on how we produce, distribute, and sell water within the MDC. Those are and finally, on the bonding issue, the good news is, and notwithstanding the fact that the bond commission is not meeting, which is awful for the MDC at this point, but the good news is that the governor's budget contains $75 million in clean water funding through geo-bonding, both in the first year of the fiscal biennium and also another $75 million in the second year. And then it also provides for $85 million of revenue bonds in the second year of the two-year budget. So that's what DEEP proposed. That's what the governor has proposed in his budget. And I will tell you that that's the only thing proposed by DEEP initially to the governor's office that the governor has included in his budget. So that's some good news. And I'll be answering any questions anyone might have.
Questions? Did that answer all your questions?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Commissioner?
It may be related to what Chris just reported, but I have actually three questions on different topics. The first is, we talked earlier about, quote, bond diet. And our CEO has talked about a bond diet, but I hope it's not a starvation diet. I mean, there's different kinds of diets, and I would assume that the governor, there are road projects that need to be built. There are a variety of different kinds of things that have to happen, so that are bonded. So I don't suspect there won't be any bonding. I think it's going to be a matter of a lot less bonding than in the past, and so I think we have the possibility of hoping for some of those dollars to come for MDC and the things that we need. And along those lines, there's been a lot of discussion recently, or matter of fact, over the last 2 weeks, nationally about a $1 trillion, a multi-trillion dollar, $2 trillion infrastructure program that there's been discussions with the House Majority Leader and the Senate leaders, Republicans, Democrats, in a bipartisan fashion.
And the president.
I can't even believe I said that, bipartisan fashion.
I think the president was also involved in that.
Yes, exactly. And so are the kinds of things that we are looking for in that package or in that are part of the discussion?
Yes, they are. And we have Attorney Bonafante isn't here tonight because we've sent him back to Washington to make sure that our needs are considered, both on the water and on the sewer side. There are significant meetings that are going forward down there over this week and next week in relation to this. And there is some reason for optimism. The Republicans in the Senate have been a little bit less sanguine about the $2 trillion. But at the same time, the head of the Senate, Senator McConnell's district, has a tremendous water problem. So reason for some optimism.
Yes, particularly given all the flooding in the Mississippi today, and will continue over the next month and a half. So thank you for answering that question. Another question I had was, we were talking, Scott, going back a little while ago about looking at our budget process and whether, are we ready to have a budget schedule to be published so we can, excuse me, look at what those meetings will look like into the summer and into the fall, so we have a little bit more time to deal with the budget as an entire body?
Do you want to answer that?
Well, go ahead.
Okay. So we have had the discussion, Commissioner, and I've reiterated your concerns to our Finance Department. We've talked to Chris and Kelly Shane, Chris Martin, Kelly Shane, about that. You're very concerned. I've talked to the Chairman of Board of Finance and to the Chairman, Mr. DeBella. So we understand, I think we need to understand a little bit better as to what you're actually looking for. As you can imagine, we really don't start the budgetary process at the MDC until late August, early September, in part because now that we're on monthly billing with water, previously we're on quarterly billing. So we really needed to understand the revenue stream during those last months of the summer to understand where the revenue side was for water. So we traditionally start the process in late August, early September. And we have, and I understand your concern about detailed meetings. I need to understand whether or not we would expect to do that in the Board of Finance. And then and we will go page by page if that's what is requested of the committee. So I leave that to you.
And all members are invited to the sessions of the Board of Finance. And I'm sure that the chairman, Commissioner Salemi, would be more than open to any suggestions that are being made relative to scheduling and participation and things of that nature. Commissioner, you want to say something?
Just to explain, I'm not looking for a line-by-line explanation. What I'm looking for is like, okay, here's the increases, here's the decreases. Please explain these.
No, I think
everybody sees that.
I think that the chief executive officer said to that extreme. So it's someplace in between.
Right.
Any further discussions? One more question?
One more question or a comment. I've been reading also in the papers that, and being east of the river, that Glastonbury has some issues with uranium. And you may be aware of that, and I'm sure the Glastonbury representatives are. And I'm wondering if that has any implication for us, or there's been any discussions about us, because there has been some discussion about, these are mostly wells, and if the wells, they're all wells, exactly.
Yeah.
And if they're being affected by uranium, I have some friends who are having testing done right now from Glastonbury, and
Sure.
I'm curious as to whether that is something that might have an impact on us and whether we're looking down the road at that.
We are, Commissioner, if you, through you. We have actually presented to the council in Glastonbury regarding the petition process and people who requested water in Glastonbury. And there are, in some cases, those communities within Glastonbury that are looking for water specifically because of the uranium in their water. So we have been working with the town diligently to try and develop those projects. The challenge that we have had in Glastonbury, and it's similar in most of our non-member towns, is that the towns, because only a small portion of the community is served by MDC, The town does not want to support that project because then they feel like the rest of the community, the majority of the town, would have to pay for it. In a non-member town by charter, the customers within that non-member town pay 100% of the cost of that project. So in Glastonbury, for example, there's 6,100 customers, and the concern our commissioner from Glastonbury and the town council have is, although you'll be providing water to, quote, 100 or so people, their concern is that the 6,100 customers don't want to pay for it. What I've cautioned them is the MDC is going to do multiple $1 million worth of work in those non-member towns anyways. So it is beneficial to the existing customer base to increase the customer base, because otherwise they'll be paying for 100% of it by themselves without increasing any customers, but just simply system upgrades. But it is a significant issue that they are having in Glastonbury, and we're going to do everything we can do. We would have to bring those projects back to the Water Bureau and get approval from the board to do those projects, but we are working on that as we speak.
Had Glastonbury been a member of the district board, it would be paid by the total Metropolitan District Commission base. So that's basically the difference you have there. Alan, and then Alvin. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I just
I meant
want
to say it the
to
other way.
pass on a little information and a caveat to MDC customers as we go through the budget process, as Commissioner LeBeau had some concerns as well. And the caveat is simply this, for customers to hear certain factual information regarding the budget going forward that comes only from authorized MDC staff. No one else. Because there has been already some misinformation that has surfaced. So I'll leave it with that.
Further, Alvin?
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, through you to my fellow commissioners, it's interesting. We're hiring legislative consultants in Washington, and I think that is particularly important. But I'd like to raise for my fellow commissioners the fact that we forget historically that the federal government paid for 80% of the infrastructure work that was done basically in this country. And that locally, either on a state or local level, you funded the other 20%. And I think that sort of indicates or shows us basically the squeeze that we're in right now. And I would hope that as we are working with our consultants in DC, even though it may not happen, I think that we need to raise the fact that when the Fed stopped funding the 80%, 79 or 80, I believe it was.
80. 1978.
That it was sort of the start of this decay of the infrastructure. I think that that's something that we need to address and that we need to raise, because the fact of the matter is that as you sit here and look at things like 84 and 91, when those were built back in the day, you only had 20% local funding. If we're going to be faced with basically completing the tunnel project, and there will be very limited state funding in terms of bonding, and I think that that's a reality that we need to face, because at some point in time, you've got to start paying your bills. And if we don't have a deeper pocket to go to, then I think that we're going to be in serious trouble. We're going to get caught in a squeeze. I mean, a real tight squeeze. because we're not going to have the revenues, and our costs and expenses are going up. So I would hope that even though there may be a limited possibility, that we raise with our delegation in Washington, D.C., that one of the things that the feds need to address and to look at very carefully with regard to infrastructure, it's one thing to say that you're going to have an infrastructure bill, but if you don't look at the funding and paying capability on the local and state level, I don't think that it is going to work out well. And I think that we are probably going to be a poster organization for that situation. So that I would hope that, that our people would be suggesting that the funding issue, and I'm not saying it needs to be 80-20 or what have you, but I think that that needs to be addressed. Because if you're talking about our then, on a local level, paying for 20% or 30%, that's a lot better than what we're being faced with now. So I would just hope that, that we would look at that and think seriously about trying to commence a discussion among the various delegations to move in that direction. Plus, finally, the thing that people tend to forget is that Connecticut sends a lot of money down to Washington, D.C. And if you look at what we get back, we basically send much more south than comes back here. So once again, I think that that's something that we need to address. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Further comments, Buddy?
Mr. Chair, I would ask that perhaps you could ask our CEO to direct the district clerk to remove this clock from the wall over here until, bring it over to his office to make sure that because it's working, it just has the wrong time, John. So, I mean, it's not stopped.
Wait a minute, Buddy. It's right twice a day.
No, it's not, because it's actually, if it was stopped, that would be true. It's not stopped. It's actually ticking. So you got to get that clock and test it out. And if you can't get it to keep time right, I suggest that you burn it, John, because we don't want somebody else to take it and start using it either. So, but perhaps you could just check into that and see what's going on with that. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Further comments? We've got one more to go here.
No, that's it.
Don't we? I'm sorry. Other business? The motion is it's in order at all times. You know that.
Second.
Without objection, we stand adjourned. Thank you for your time and patience.